one way or another.
It makes sense. So if one of the two of us isn't there, we manage to make it under 90 minutes. But as long as we're there, it will be 2 hours. Look who we've
Indeed.
got
And actually,
backstage.
yeah, I know. Before we get to the philosophy, we've plucked somebody from the chat. Unfortunately, he was unable to make the show yesterday, but here he is today. Mr. Teacher, Lucien, welcome. Nice
Hello,
haircut,
everybody.
by
I
the way.
hope.
You look sharp, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, it was much needed after everything that's been going on in the house. Is the audio okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Sounds good to
Good
me.
Thanks
to see
God.
you, Lucien.
Thanks for having me, guys. It has been great working with you
Yeah,
guys. Oh, I'm in the same chat
yeah.
Maybe,
as
So,
Nima.
maybe,
I'm
Lucien,
so hyped.
I'm gonna throw
maybe
you.
the
I'm gonna throw you right
philosophy.
into the
Yeah.
fire here. I'm gonna throw you right into the fire before we get to the philosophy, real quick. Lucien, why do you check your overall rank each week? What's the purpose of that act?
For the color of the arrow. I mean,
Green or red.
It's like an emotional, right? It's like, oh, good or good. Is that what it is?
I think for me it's more about reflection of the game. So I don't check. I'm not too bothered about my rank at the end of the game week. I check it from day to day, from Saturday to Sunday and Sunday to Monday. I prefer watching those changes. But
Mm,
after all the games are done, I'm just like, whatever. That rank doesn't matter. Because um your psychology of the game, right? It varies depending on how many players you have from the early games to the late game. So, for example,
mm.
this particular game week, right? I had very few players in the first 5 matches, especially when I sold Sun. So I was just looking at it and like, wow, my red arrow is going to be massive. And then I went to the Sunday games thinking, okay, I might have a chance. I have players like Salah captain, I have Haaland and Alvarez for insurance, and yeah, so just watching how points get distributed across just within the
Throughout the
game week itself
days.
is yeah.
And some matches you have four
Okay.
assets. Like next week, I have Trippier, sorry, I have Gordon and Burn and Saka and Gabriel. So I look at that and I'm like, there's four players in one game. Like that's unnecessary emotion for my blood pressure as an Arsenal fan. So I'm like, should I sell some of these guys? I was gonna roll the transfer, but now I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna sell a Newcastle player. I'm out of it.
That's what I'm considering as well. Well, so we'll get there. Good segue.
Yeah, so I think we'll go back from this back to the philosophy briefly. So I'll just timestamp that 6 minutes just for myself for later. But yeah, let's do the philosophy of the week and then we'll go straight into Game Week 11. But in the chat, guys, let us know what you think if Gabe should check his rank after all, because that was kind of the crux of the debate. And we've seen the debate for why you should look, the emotions and roller coasters. Mariner, when he was doing so well, if he hadn't checked Gabe, he wouldn't have seen he was like live rank 21 at one point. So, like Lucien was
Yeah.
saying, on like a Friday, Saturday, Monday, or something, if you see your rank at the end of one of the game days, but there's still more games to go, depending on how many of your assets played, you might see your best ever live OR, and it will be better than any finish you ever have. So, for most people, their best live rank is better than their best ever finish. It's very
Okay.
few the other way around. Some people who have their best ever OR is also their best finish. That means
Mhm.
that's crazy. You're looking at like that doesn't work for me. You must be finishing at 30th or first. So those are top numbers. But yeah, for
I
me, it's all about that chase. It's that high, just to add to what Lucien was saying, like just wanting to know that you're there and somehow you've competed, and in that moment, in the middle of the
Have you
game,
had a
you
moment
want
like
to.
that, Nima? Did you have a good high like that this season yet?
I think the funny thing is, I think my finish same season as Mariners, it got overshadowed because he finished in the end 121st after being live ranked 21 for a while as well. And he was in London with us. He was with me. He was with FPL Mate before they got into the feud with each other a few years ago. There's a photo of them, and then Mate tweeted saying another top 1K manager. They were both having a great season. I think Mariner got like 1K followers that week on Twitter from the selfie with Mate. Like that. And then obviously when Mate said he was the best ranked content creator and called this a small channel, Net That Haul, it went a bit bad. But I'm still friends with both of them, both Mariner and Mate. So that's why I feel like I can talk about the story. And I lightened the mood by sending the photo of them smiling merely 12 months before rank had become a thing. So what that shows us is that they're both just very competitive and both wanted to finish top of all the content creators. And so in terms of what you asked, yeah, for me that same season it got overshadowed, but I finished my best season. It was like 895. So I thought, yes, triple digit rank, only ever top 1K. 2 years before that had come 1,102, And talking of live rank, Gabe, game week 38, I'm sitting there, it's the 89th minute, and I'm outside in a 4-digit rank, and I was like 109. So I'm like 7 worse or 7 better than my best finish 2 years before at 104. And just as the games were ending, my battery dies, so I can't check live rank anymore, Gabe. And I hear that like James has an assist, Robertson has an assist, like loads of points just start happening in the injury time of all the games. And there's 10 matches happening at once. Finally, I can't check, and someone on their phone checked for me. And me and Harry, FPL Harry, were competing. It was one of his best 3 seasons, like he's had consecutively. And in the FPL Meets Mini League for London members, I just beat him that day, and he was so confident he was going to win. But I ended up finishing higher, and that's how I got the triple-digit rank. So those like assists from James and Robert at the end in the 95th minute, like that got me my best ever FPL finish, and it was so marginal. So to be able to see that game, it feels like it's more of a journey because I'll always remember that now, the way it happened and the roller coaster of my feelings.
I think that's fair. I think at the end, I get it. I get the purpose at the end of the season. It can also dictate strategy and stuff. But until game week 30, maybe?
Originally, you said game week 10. So hopefully, if you lost to game week 30, I'll be surprised. If you do,
we'll see if
if you do,
we'll
you
see
might
if
as
they
well go
give
the
it-
whole season. I think you have to.
I know,
You have to look. You got to look either halfway. So either at game week 19 you look, or I think you got to go the rest of the season because it becomes counterintuitive the further you get to then look.
And that's I don't know that, and that's what Nick says. He says maybe after game week 19. I will look if I find a valid, maybe strategic reason to look. Otherwise, I'll just stay in process and I won't care. But let's get to the philosophy. We're 10. We're 10
let's
minutes
go in. Yeah, now our time
let's
is
go
10
right
minutes
in.
for the philosophy.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
FPL Philosophy, game week 11 comes to us from astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. He says, knowing how to think empowers you far beyond those who know only what to think. And I mean, this goes back to kind of a theme of a lot of my philosophical quotes here that I put up here. And it's what to think, what is product, and how is process, right? So the product is like maybe the players that you select, right? But it's the process in how you got there to select those players, knowing your own process. That knowledge is far greater and far more, let's just say far more useful, right? Than knowing the product, like knowing whether to select Bowen or friggin' Luis Diaz, right? That's almost irrelevant. What is more relevant is how you got there, not where you are.
I like it. It's like last week's philosophy, really. We said it's about how you got there to the happiness ultimately, and it wasn't through chasing the happiness. It was through the journey and giving back and your compassion and adventure getting you there. Yeah. But no, I love that. But I think as we are so far behind the show, we'll let Lucien say any thoughts he has in the philosophy, but then we will promise to the haulers in the chat the next stage will definitely be game week 11 matchups show.
We'll just take off time from the Arsenal analysis.
Hey, exactly. Later. I'll just say 5 minutes there. It's easy enough for me to cut that. I'll promise that from now.
I'll keep it under 30 seconds, I promise. I watched an interview and there was a quote from Carl Jung actually that says that we have very limited knowledge about our understanding of the world, just like FPL, and so we make a lot of first pass approximations of what we assume to be true. So I think in that sense that encapsulates what how to think means in FPL. You know, we got to look at what we assume to be true. If a player is playing as the number 9, as a striker, is he assumed to get most of the points? In certain teams, yes. In certain teams, not so much. So I think that is at least the very beginning of how to think. And yeah, I'll just keep it at that.
Lovely stuff. There's 20 of you here live. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you've laughed or smiled along with us so far as we've not got to the FPL yet, thank you for bearing with us. Hit that like button because you must have hopefully enjoyed the last 11 minutes of Lucien's late arrival. He's arrived for the show just 24 hours later. That's the funny part. It's the same time as yesterday, but a different day.
True.
It's like you got your dates wrong because of the time zones. I don't know how Net That Haul does it, but we bring everyone together from all over the world, different countries, watching in live late at night. So yeah, thank you all. We love you for that, guys. But let's go to the summary. This is just for the podcast listeners. If you come to 13 minutes and a half, you will see the whole of the matchups we're about to talk through. But we will talk about these as we go, and then look at the summary.
Let me
you want to add anything
highlight a
now?
couple. I want to
Fine,
highlight
we can do it at the
a couple
start.
of
Okay.
things. Just
It might shape the
it's just
conversation for the rest of the show. Yeah.
yeah. So I want to note how high Crystal Palace's NetxG is away to Burnley. I thought that was interesting considering we haven't seen much attack from them, and how there are several where the NetxG contrasts with the shots matchup predictors. Palace is one, City is another, right? What else we have? You could say that Newcastle, maybe like the shot predictors are much greater than what the
FDR loves Newcastle as well. When you look at the longer range, like mid-range 5-game week rankings for attack and defense, I know last week they were the best, weren't they? Obviously, that will have changed this week, so it'll be interesting to see how it's changed.
And note that the second best NetxG value here is Lucien's very own Wolves.
Damn.
And they just lost Neto, and how will that affect them? So just some interesting things. The data is kind of weird, funky, and interesting this game week because there's some interesting matchups too, fixtures.
Black Screen says a very funny comment before we go, which is Burnley have decided that defending isn't what a Premier League team does. So I love that. That just feels like a philosophy of its own. But let's go into the matchups. I just add that on as we go. So first game, wow, I didn't realize this was the 12:30 kickoff. That's crazy. Fulham versus Manchester United. And I'll read out the data real quick. The NetxG is 1.29 for Fulham at home, and it's 1.13 for Man United away at Fulham. So that's definitely closer than I was expecting to see this. People have been touting the next 3 game weeks as a great run for Man United. I've been seeing accounts like the official Fantasy Football Scout account asking if people are buying into them for this run of 3 fixtures. Even on Lego Mane's FDR, these next 3 are like highlighted as a block. It's one of the only blocks United have in like the next 10 to 15 weeks. So if you're really bullish on United, now's the punt. But everyone's going for it. It's like clockwork game. They've like all come round, and we've held these players for 10, 12 weeks, and then they've got Luton after this. And so there's a narrative building yet again that we should hold on to them. And when we get to, I'd love to know what you think, like, because the data seems to go very against that narrative. It cuts straight through it, right? Well, the FDR likes United more. I will say that for the podcast listeners. That's unfair. So
yeah.
The FDR gives United a 2 for attack and minus 0.3 for Fulham. So it definitely favors them far more in that game, like as a 2-0, 1-0. But the NetxG could be a 1-1.
I have to say this is a proud moment for me, for NetxG, that it's finally put Manchester United below a team like Fulham. And I couldn't be more
will be
proud.
very happy. This is the best week for Combe. I hope
this is.
Where
is he? Where is he? He should be in the chat. He's usually in the chat. Anytime I think anything negative about Fulham, Combs right there. He's like on my shoulder.
Magically appears.
So full on, like for Fulham. You know what? Like I'm kind of with NetxG, and it's not surprising. It's a little bit of confirmation bias. I've been kind of criticizing United intensely all season. So to see this, and I want to say that Fulham's going to get something here. Fulham have been decent at home. And there's someone that said in the chat that there's just nothing in United, and I think the data supports that, barring the FDR, which I'd be curious to understand. I'm gonna highlight Fulham's left side again with Willian and Andres Pereira. I think they could do some damage there, especially if is it still Dalot? Is Wan-Bissaka back? I'm not sure about that. I'd like to get your thoughts on this one, Lucien.
Well, again, for the podcast, for the audio podcast listeners, right? Gabe's got the average positioning map for Fulham's game against Brighton, where Andres Pereira did not start. So the question is, right, how do we perceive Andres Pereira's potential in this particular matchup? Because Gabe, all season, right, we've been talking about how Pereira's not playing the number 10 anymore. He's playing like this hybrid left central midfield 8 sort of thing, and without Andres Pereira starting in the side, you have Alex Iwobi stepping up. So I think it's number 22 you see in the graphic here, where he's smack right behind Raul Jimenez. And in the second picture, you see a very familiar number 18, central, furthest forward. exactly when they brought him on, and that was how they found the equalizer against Brighton. So if we foresee Andres Pereira playing this exact role that we love so much, they will absolutely smash Man United. Because try as we might to predict what Man United do in attack, beating them is surprisingly easy. You just don't press Man United
Yes.
centre backs and watch Bruno Fernandes and Amrabat as closely as you can. As long as you disrupt that central midfield link, that's how so many teams have like disrupted Man United's momentum so much that against Man City, their best connection basically has been Christian Eriksen going out to the flank, long ball to Rashford up front, or Rashford himself go out to the wing, long ball up front for Højlund. It's been that simple for Man United. So, I mean, really, the ball is in Fulham's court, literally, just to absolutely smash Man United, depending on when they want to unleash the beast that is Andres Pereira here.
Is there a world where Andres Pereira, Iwobi, and William play?
Absolutely. There have been very, very short instances where Iwobi and Andreas Pereira both play as number 10s. So Fulham have had they've experimented with like 10 to 15 minute periods where they actually play two number 10s and William stays on the left side. That is, of course, with Joe Palhinha holding everything together like friggin' Spider-Man. But they're like these fragile 15-minute periods where it has happened. And coincidentally, this coincides with Man United's most frail mentality periods just after halftime. I don't know how many people have picked this up because so many Man United fans have actually complained to me that, yeah, it doesn't matter what we do in the first half. If we do not concede in the opening 10 minutes of the second half, we have a chance of winning the game. That is exactly how everything plays out for Man United right now. There's this strange, fragile mentality that United have. They somehow just cannot keep the ball and they just have so much lapse of concentration just after halftime. Maybe it's the food or the shower
I
or
think
the lack of
I
hair
have a
dryer.
theory. They just listened to a speech from Eric Ten Hag,
And it's in Dutch
and
that
they're
maybe
a
nobody
mess, and they're a
understands.
friggin' mess. After a speech, they're a mess.
Yeah, so yeah, Fulham's strengths play perfectly into Man United's weaknesses. So yeah, looking forward to like that golden spell after halftime.
I just want to add in terms of the talk they've been getting by Ten Hag. So the United stand on Twitter, they put the Ten Hag's quote on form. He said, "What is form? For me, form doesn't exist. It's the form of the day. And so make sure you are on the day in the right form." So he's telling them this stuff, right? He's telling them what is form? It doesn't exist. It's the form of each day is the form. There isn't such a thing as form apart from that day specifically. And so today, just make sure you are in form. So this is the quotes he was giving out at like 3:55 p.m. 2 days ago on the 29th of October. Before, this is 20 minutes into the match. He's saying this stuff pre-game against City. These are his quotes pre-game. And you look at that and you think there's leaks coming out. It sounds like he might go a lot quicker. That quote, once I read that, I was just in shock. I was like, how is he saying this pre-game and it's coming out like as a tweet before like the first half has ended? It's during the half. Like, what? And I've seen him do this. He said this about one of the players they played. Did United play Bayern in the first game? And he criticized Bayern's defender and he was saying how like the United kid, someone like Palestri, was way faster or way better. And he was talking about like a season Champions League fullback. Like, I think he was talking about like Alphonso Davies or someone. And he was just criticizing them and shitting on them. And it's like the opponent, before he plays them, the manager's out there shitting on their team and like cussing individual players. I just don't get it. I don't understand.
I mean,
And the tight socks story. Sorry, the tight socks. Now they're saying they've had to wear different shirts and tight socks. I saw FPL Dabby on Twitter, a big United fan. He did some research. He said he's seen one game where there was like a fake replica shirt Onana wore at once, and it was the most recent game. And then like the socks, like they've not been using the official socks for a while, but apparently every club's had these issues for years, and they just cut the socks. Like, and I'm like, so, but this is like the news that's coming out now from the Glazers. So it sounds like the Glazers are trying to make it out that if we sack this guy, things will be good to get attention off themselves. But I know the fans really, they probably want the Glazers out because this all ultimately comes down to them and it's under their stewardship. So I really hope for United fans that they do move on. But let's go to any assets you want to discuss in this game before we move on to the next matchup. So yeah, any assets on your eyes? Would you buy Maguire this week? I dare to ask with his next two. He's at 4.2, 4.3 million.
No, get Branthwaite instead. I'm with Nick here. I think this is too much time discussing a match between a meaningless team and Fulham. So I think we've mentioned the assets.
The assets
Speaking of moving
everyone
on.
knows. We talked about
Yeah.
Bruno and Rashford and Højlund. I think for me.
Oh no, I meant Willian.
Oh, Willian, that's the only one you're interested in. Yeah, each week now. Next week it's going to be Carlton Morris on the captaincy metric.
Right.
You heard it here first. You think I'm joking? Let's see what the data shows. Okay, this game, Brentford versus West Ham. This is probably a lot more FPL relevant. Got people are looking to buy back into Mbeumo. Some just sold him and they're looking to buy straight back. What do you guys think about this match? Is it as even as the NetxG would suggest, like a tight draw, or is it like the FDR, which is crazily in Brentford's favor with a 4.8?
Strong disagreement in the metrics here with NetxG, Brentford 1.3 and West Ham 1.42. So really tight encounter there. And then the FDR 4.8 for Brentford and 1 for West Ham, and that's really interesting. And I think the shots goal predictor kind of backs the FDR. As does the matchup data. I don't know. How do you see this one, like tactically, Lucien? Because I mean, West Ham's defense has not been good, right? But I don't know if they're the right kind of tactical matchup for Brentford. What do you think?
One word to sum up West Ham's defense is static. And it really is because they just wait. They wait for danger to enter their area before they even do anything about the situation. So that was how they conceded against Everton. They just set off. They set off DCL so much that honestly, if you press him really hard and force him into wide areas, DCL isn't that effective. So in any case, I think Brentford versus West Ham screams, like literally screams, set pieces. It's exactly going to be the same scenario as the Brentford Everton game, where literally nothing happened in the first half, and then all the big chances in the second half happened through set pieces. It just so happened that Tarkowski was the star of the show. Yeah, I think we're starting to see now that West Ham are basically anti-hero, where they have a solid game plan against the big sides, and they come up against somebody like somebody favorable, right? And they underwhelm against Luton, and they lose to Everton, and now, yeah, you're up against Brentford, the gatekeepers between the top half and the bottom half of the table. So the question is how boring this game is going to be. I really mean it in that sense, because West Ham, unfortunately, tactically fell over themselves this last game week. If you notice, in the average position graphic here for audio pod listeners, the number 9, Mikel Antonio, is dead center, but you will notice a massive hole on West Ham's left, which is meant to be filled by, anybody want to guess? Anybody want to guess who made his debut last week?
Debut on the left?
Yeah.
Who was it?
New signing.
Kudus?
Yeah, Kudus actually started against Everton. So the unfortunate thing is that push comes to shove, you still saw Paqueta drift out to the left side. And that is the problem with West Ham at the moment. Their plan A is so solid that they cannot really phase in new signings just yet, even when they remove Antonio completely and they push Kudus up to that central position. Yeah, West Ham just cannot adapt. Like, they've got no cohesive plan when they actually have majority of the ball. So I do foresee this being extremely based on set pieces, because it just happens to suit the way both teams play. It's just a matter of whether West Ham's corners and free kicks come into the picture, or do Brentford's throw-ins trouble West Ham a lot more. I think that's going to be the deciding factor between the two.
Yeah, Kudus, But Kudus started at the 10, and Paquetá played mostly at the left. Now Kudus moved around quite a bit in that match, and I think that's what, like, someone mentioned. Yeah, Black Screen says Kudus was awful. He didn't seem to fit the tactics. He was floating around. There was some interchange with Paquetá on that left hand side. He'd float over there, but Kudus actually found himself a lot on the right, in behind Bowen. And that took him out of the play. So he would drag away from that 10 position, maybe to open up the passing lane to get to Bowen. Maybe that was part of the instruction. But then he wasn't very much involved in and around the ball after that. So he wouldn't like come back in or continue the run to the post on the right side. So I think Kudus is still tactically speaking for Moyes is still a work in progress. My theory is that, and I'll explore it more when I do matchups today, when I write the analysis, is that Brentford struggle against static defenses. Like Brentford's movements and the types of players they have in the attack, they need defenses to move around and so they can get into that space. And I think West Ham just provides a little bit of a sticky matchup for Brentford. I think I see this as kind of low scoring, not much going on. Two teams kind of like West Ham waiting for Brentford to do something, and Brentford doing small things that West Ham don't react to. I don't know how you see that. What your thoughts are about that dynamic?
Everything comes down to Brentford's new signing of the season that has finally shown up, Matt Jensen. They reacted really well to this massive gap against Chelsea, right? There was this massive hole between Thiago Silva at centre back and Cucurella at left back. So once Jensen filled in that space, Mbomo was like, I'm going to learn from that. Crashed into that space and provided the assist for Pinnock, right, for the first goal. So I think, yeah, it just comes down to what Jensen does, because the space in West Ham's defense would be between the lines. That gap between Edson Alvarez and the back four is exactly where Jensen would dictate play. And, if Jensen does it and Mbomo does it later, then you will see things happen.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Just before we go, I want to mention Areola. So is he the default keeper for you still? Black Screen asks. I think if I was wildcarding this week, I wouldn't, but that's obviously a money thing. So I've gone for him in a 3.9 or 4 million goalkeeper, right? So but ideally I would want Johnston for 0.3 million more, just because the fixtures he has coming up, they're golden. And I just want to invest in the Crystal Palace defense, because every season they seem to be the mid-price team that always shows up in the metrics. And like already I've ignored like Anderson for so long that he's unaffordable. So it would be like a Gahey. And then I question, do I want Gahey as a third defender each week when there's the likes of kind of, Spurs, Arsenal, Brighton, Villa, Newcastle defenders? Like, why not just get Johnston? Because I don't trust Areola and the West Ham defense. And I kind of regret going there, but it was a price thing for me, I think, at the time in game week 8 when I did it. Now that, Palace's tough games are all out of the way for now, this is like the ideal time to buy in there if you can, I think, personally. But it'll be good to see where they rank defensively this week compared to the other 20 matchups when we get to the summary.
So that was an interesting decision, right? Back in game week 8, some people went really budget goalkeepers with Areola and Turner, something like that. I went a different route. I went Areola and Raya.
Yeah,
and
you did. Yes, I like that.
But that's good and that's worked out. But the cost of that, right? Like
There's
I can't
money
go
just tied
easily.
up there. Yeah,
I can't go easily from Madison to Saka. Like I'm like basically like 0.3 million short. It's like whatever the difference between a 4-5, right? And so it's when you see it in the greater context, it's interesting. When selecting goalkeepers, though, I think fixtures are absolutely irrelevant at this stage in the season, because you're not going to change that goalkeeper again until your second wild card.
yeah.
Right. So you have about like 20 game weeks. So like fixtures will be good now and bad later, bad now, good later. Does it? So I don't think you should look at fixtures when selecting a goalkeeper. I think we should probably talk about Mbomo a little bit. Because obviously a lot of people sold. Yeah, a lot of people sold, and he keeps banging. Obviously a lot of people are thinking of bringing him back in game week 14 when his good fixtures start. But is there, if you did sell, would you precipitate that transfer? How are we feeling, or how are we seeing Mbomo's returns?
I definitely want him game week 14 against Luton. So I think I'm just
Yeah.
going to plot the course and wait. But there's an argument to be made to go for him now. I think if I just sold him, I would be stubborn and continue with the plan that I decided, not throw it out the window from one game week, see it through, but then just confirm that I will go back, because I didn't like what I was seeing from Brentford's attack for a few weeks recently. And then he goes and does those back-to-back hauls in the tough fixtures, supposedly. And it kind of makes you realize that he may actually still be one of the best players in the game in terms of his price, because of the 90 minutes, the penalties, the way Brentford play. There's always some like random like goal at the end, like a long ball. They're just
Because of the
push.
97 minutes. Mbomo always gets
Yeah.
something after the 90 minutes. Right?
Yeah, it's always after the 90th minute. It's
After-
like Salah with his goal, gifted a goal by Turner. Like some players are just they're so tenacious. They get their goal whenever it comes. But yeah, he's looking good, and I'm sure he's someone who a lot of people are considering. I know people who wildcarded in game week 10 and 8 and kept him in. So not everyone sold, and kudos to those who held on.
Yeah, I'm curious to get Lucien's thoughts on Mbomo before we go to. I think we should do Nick's question while we're here, because it's everything about this game. So so what do you think, Lucien, regarding Mbomo?
Well, I'm gonna quote your average position graphic again, and I'm trying to find the timing of my substitutions because I've got like a million notes made here. But I cannot find it. But okay, so the average position graphic in before substitutions show that Mbomo plays on the right and Wisa plays on the left. That's everything we expect, right? But we've noted for a few weeks now that Brentford suffered in terms of form when players on their left side became completely injured. They lost Schade, they lost Rico Henry. And if you look at the graphic on the right side, you see literally nobody on the left.
Yeah. Once the subs are made, there's no one on the left side.
Yeah, so they've really put the house on the right side, literally, and it's gone to the extent that number 7, Neil Mopoi, can face an open goal and still pass it to Mbomo. So I don't know what you call that, but I feel that talisman is the real definition here, because yeah, like the ball could fall for literally anybody else, and they probably still look for Brian Mbomo anyway.
They just want to give it to him. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. That is a great asset to have. You want selfish players who get all the points, but even better if their teammates are going to be the ones selfishly wanting to pass the ball. Yeah.
If you have generous teammates and a selfish player, it's a match made in heaven for fantasy, right?
Sounds like it. Let's get this match. We've been on for nearly 15 minutes, so we will keep going because we're only 2 matchups in.
Really quickly though. Start Flecken or Areola. Flecken at home for me.
If I had Flecken, I'd probably be starting him.
Yeah.
I don't have that luxury, so I will be playing Areola. But let's go to the next matchup. So Burnley versus Crystal Palace. We won't spend long here, I don't think. Bar the Palace defense and maybe some stuff about Taylor's goal last week. He saved it till all the people who wildcarded him in could get him as a first sub for Udogie and for Gabriel. Taylor really came in clutch. Him and Branthwaite this week raised the average.
Apologies for the data there. That I guess it didn't. This happens sometimes. It doesn't save properly.
It's Burnley. No, was it Brentford West Ham?
Brentford West Ham data. So
yeah, ignore the data, but the podcast viewers can't see that anyway. So we'll let you read out the correct numbers if you've got them handy. Otherwise, we can talk about the match a bit more. Me and Lucien, while you find them.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about this game then, Lucien? Any glaring weaknesses in either side? You would think it's a must-win game for Burnley at home.
Yeah. Question is how they're going to win it. I don't think Burnley have shown any evidence of actually winning games, even though they did actually win the game against Luton. Everything falls down to whether Lau Foster plays. He did not show up against this very crucial game against Bournemouth. So, yeah, Burnley had to rejig their setup completely, and they just did not have a plan B. No matter who they play at right back, they cannot do the Man City thing and take control of midfield. So it's just a matter of when they will get run over by Crystal Palace, because the irony here is that Crystal Palace themselves have run out of wingers and they've decided to put more central midfielders in midfield. Yeah. So I'm looking at this and it's well, it's gonna be chaotic in some sense, where you can imagine Crystal Palace dispossessing Burnley and then setting somebody off. So the question comes down to whether Jordan Ayew on the quote unquote left punishes them because Ayew can float about, or does Palace bring somebody new in? I think it's been screaming for a while now that they've tried Edouard alone, doesn't work. They've tried Mateta alone, doesn't work. It's tried both of them together, they look like West Ham. And if they bring in, or at least if they try and implement JRS, I don't know what his first name is, but Raksaki absolutely deserves a mention. And yeah, I mean, that's something for like the far, far future. But
yeah, he's very young,
yeah,
isn't he? Yeah.
yeah. So it's just about being defensively sound because if Burnley don't have Lau Foster, if he's still ill, then yeah, it's a
You're
match made in
making me
heaven for
feel
Palace.
like this Gahey pick could be nice. I know he obviously just missed the sitter. He could have got a header in last week as well. So it's not just Anderson with the attacking threat. Although I do love Anderson. I have him in other formats where like you get points for more than just goals, assists, and clean sheets, and he rakes in the points. He's an all-action blockbuster. I've seen him when I saw him play against Arsenal, the Emirates. His ball from defense, Lucien, like just the way he can switch it to either wing from the center back position, and next thing you know, they're mounting an attack. The precision and the distance and the power. I'm just like, he is like one of the best playmakers in that Palace team. And to think I could have had him at 4.5 million. But yep, it's a shame.
I think we're overblowing Palace defense here a little bit. I mean,
For the
Palace are
price,
not a
though, for
good
the
team,
price.
man. The price, what, 4.5?
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
Simicas.
You say this.
They're better.
Yeah,
Get
of
Pau
course, you
Torres,
get
get
them first, but some people already have them. Some people had the foresight that they bought these defenders weeks ago for these weeks ahead. So now the interesting thing will be whether we win, those who make the decision with more information now, like a Simicas. For example, now we hear Jesus could not be back maybe till December. So 6 games in all competitions. So suddenly, if you're thinking Eddie has more games, he becomes more interesting to discuss as well. So I think it's similar with Simicas. He's more interesting now because Robbo clearly is out. So I think things change, and each week the vogue player will change. So I guess this week you're right. These Crystal Palace assets are not the vogue transfer I'd be looking to buy in.
And I'll just go over the data really quickly. It's NetxG Burnley 1.17, Crystal Palace 1.97. So it likes Crystal Palace attack quite a bit. FDR disagrees on the Palace attack with just a 1.0. Burnley attack negative 0.6. So maybe sees a potential clean sheet for Palace. But I don't know. Palace are not a good team. They are abysmal without an outlet, without anything creative, and they have weaknesses in defense, and I think Johnstone is one of them. I know people have talked him up, but I don't
think
really see.
I think it's because the backup keeper they signed got injured. So the people who had Johnston were looking to sell him in the first few game weeks. I remember. I think Mark, who came on the show, General, I think he had him, and it was only once. I think was it Dean Henderson they'd signed, and then he got injured or something. Or they didn't end up signing him because he was injured, something like that. Something happened, and he's now a bit more secure. But forgetting the goalkeeper, just in terms of the next games, Gabe. So let's say you're saying this could be a clean sheet. So he has Burnley in this game away. He then has Everton home, Luton away, West Ham away, Bournemouth home. So for me, I'm looking at those 5, and I'm like, do you rate them, say, like Salah, where he has Luton, Brentford, City, Fulham, Sheffield? 4 of those 5, apart from City, look better for Simicas, if you could argue. So with Allison behind him as well, I see your point. Like if Simicas costs like 4.6, in what universe are you not going to take the gift that the game has given you and go and buy another defender from like a Palace?
Exactly. Get the good players from good teams, and if they're too expensive, then get the less good players from good teams.
Still get the players,
not less good players from less good teams. That's a bad combination.
I think what will be interesting is to see whether the likes of Eze and Elise, and if their return kind of then has a more positive impact going forwards for Palace, then they might be worth discussing because they would have had some price drops as well. But until that day, it sounds like you would avoid them. Let's go to Everton versus Brighton next. there's some Pickford owners out there still, and they got the last laugh after I wildcarded him out. But it is what it is. Happy belated Halloween for everyone as well. Pickford reminds me of Halloween, so good. Anyway, so this one for the audience, this one is the correct data, thankfully. So the NetxG is 1.23 for Brighton to 0.97 for Everton. The FDR, on the other hand, for Everton is actually 2.8 for attack, with only 1.2 for Brighton. So the metrics disagree to an extent. It's still quite a close match, I could argue. I think Everton have looked much improved, and they're going to be at home. So Brighton, we know, are recently struggling with the lack of left back, right? So we don't know where Lamptey is. We don't know where Stupinian is. So that's meant Mitoma's had to hold the width a bit more. But I saw people messaging me, Gabe, saying, oh, Mitoma's playing wing back. And I was like, what? And then when I listened to what everyone else was saying, they were like, yeah, but he was still like the furthest forward just because of the way it was set up, where the striker actually was dropping deeper. Ferguson, he was playing deeper. So you ended up with him high, but it sounds like he was also wide. So yeah, that's a painful one. I hope if Estupinian's back, he would be a purchase I would make this week. Speaking of defenders, I would prioritize him over Simicast if I knew he was 100%, but it's a shame, isn't it? So what are your guys' thoughts? Do you have any Brighton players? I see a lot of people selling Mitoma from a blank. I think that's crazy with these fixtures, but
I'm going to say one quick thing just to build on something that we had talked about last week, and then I'll hand it off to Lucien to go over kind of his analysis of what he saw from Brighton against Fulham. So Mitoma lined up as a wingback, but he didn't play as a wingback. So I think that was but the problem Brighton have is without a creative wingback on the left-hand side, they're actually quite dysfunctional. And like they weren't, totally terrible in this one, but Mitoma needs that runner on the outside to give him space to dribble in that half space. Without that, and I don't know what the status is on Estupinian. I'll check Premier injuries while Lucien goes into what he saw from
I think
Brighton
he was in
but
training. I think he was in solo training though last week. So he's back
if
training.
he's back, Mitoma, I think, is about to smash it. If Estupinian is back, what do you think, Lucien?
When you run out of fullbacks, right, you just stuff the center, don't you? The shame here is that your graphic shows West Ham for Brighton's case. So because we would be able to gloriously see how packed Brighton had, like how Brighton were, in attacking midfield. Usually we expect Brighton to draw teams forward and to have the likes of Gross and Balaba or like just draw opponents forward, and then they make those quick combination plays, and all of a sudden Mitoma's like up against a fullback, right? So in this particular case, when you don't have any fullbacks, they just put Baleba and Dahoud in central midfield. They played Gross, they played Lallana, they played Ferguson, who's basically an attacking midfielder. 5 attacking midfielders constantly rotating in that number 10 zone between the lines. They absolutely outnumbered Fulham in the first half. But honestly though, Brighton need that moment of inspiration in order to free the wingers. They still need, the quick wall pass that De Zerbi is so known for. Usually, Gross is the one that drops into like somewhere around the centre back area to pull this off, and Man City exploited this. But enough about that. More important is that we are starting to see a certain squad player, Dahoud, come into the fray. You looked at that lineup against Fulham, right? And you think that someone like Adam Lallana would be the match winner. But no, it was actually Dahoud on that left side who managed to help Mitoma and Lallana free Mitoma down the left side for some of Brighton's big chances down the left. So I look at this and I do feel that if Estupinian doesn't start, then you'd see Adingra shine way, way brighter. At least for now. Because Adingra is way more direct and he has Pascal Gross on that right side, who's far more experienced at playing all these matchups so that he knows when to outnumber his opponents. I think it also helps that you have the likes of Welbeck strangely coming on, but Ansu Fati, I feel, as a 58th minute substitute that came on against Fulham, also amplified all that potential on the right side. It's just a matter of whether Brighton will be exploited, because Everton in this particular case behaved very, very strongly, particularly down the flank. So, you see Jack Harrison on the right, pressuring Mitoma alongside his fullback. or you see McNeil on the left working alongside Mikolenko pressing Adingra back. That was exactly how Fulham exploited that matchup on the flanks after half time. Will it happen here? I don't exactly know because I don't know which Brighton 11 will appear next game. But assuming things stay the same, I'd still favor Everton, unfortunately, for this matchup without Estupinian.
Even with the break, because obviously Brighton are going to have the midweek free, and I don't know if Everton are still in the League Cup or not. I haven't seen if they're playing tonight, but I'll have a look. On that note, in terms of Estupinian, before we move on, we have Premier League injuries from Ballroom Jam, 4th of November, which would be the game week this weekend. They say 50% chance. Then we've got to wait for the presser. I hope the Zerbi doesn't lie, but he's sometimes been quite direct and said who's starting in certain games. He just name drops a player and goes, yeah, this player's starting. He does it here and there, doesn't he, Lucien? So hopefully he'll make an announcement if Estupinian is back. But is there anything you want to say, Gabe? Otherwise, apart from kind of Braithwaite as a 4 million asset, who I regret not having. So I went Lamptey at the time to save 0.1, so I could afford Maddison to Saka. And at the end, it didn't work out for me. I wish I'd kind of just gone for Braithwaite at the time, but it is what it is. So, but apart from that, I think we should go because this one's been 7 minutes, so we're doing better.
One thing about Adingra though, I think there's if you are looking to go there to kind of capitalize on March's injury, I think he's a rotation threat. Bonanota's healthy again, and Fati can play there, so there are 3 players that can play on that right wing, so making him a little bit risky. But I do like what Lucien said, that the potential of that, especially if Estupinian is out. But I think Brighton overall are just dysfunctional without that left-sided support and attack.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So we'll see which Brighton turns up, as you both say. Next one is Man City versus Bournemouth. I'm sure this will be one that's heavy in the captaincy metric. Anyone here looking to buy Alvarez or Foden this week?
I have Alvarez from my previous.
Yeah, I have Alvarez as well.
Okay,
yeah.
You both already have him, so Foden isn't of interest. What about John Stones? Could I interest either of you in him? A different type of Johnston.
Yes, I highlighted him in the review show yesterday. John Stones is going to be a thing. He's going to be the best City defensive asset to have. I don't know if right now is the best time. I think maybe wait a few weeks for their fixtures to turn. This is obviously a decent fixture for them, especially at home. So I don't mind that at all.
Nice. All right, so I'll just quickly read out the data for the podcast views, and then we'll ask Lucien what he thinks about the matchup. So Man City, 2.29 NetxG, 0.82 for Bournemouth. The FDR, on the other hand, 3.4 for Man City in attack, and only negative 0.2 for Bournemouth. So I definitely think this game seems to be on paper one of the kind of bankers of the week, I suppose, especially at the Etihad. This is the kind of game where I'd go so far as to say I'm looking at, 3-0 minimum for Man City? Is these famous last words here? Or surely, this is like a walk in the park for them. Like, if they can 3-0 United at Old Trafford, surely at home against Bournemouth, the data suggests they're going to rip them apart. And sorry to any Cherries fans. Yeah, sorry to any Cherries fans in the chat. It's a tough week.
Well, honestly, I mean, being a Wolves fan, I know exactly what it's like being relegation threatened, where your manager's pulling out all these desperation last ditch tactics that you've never seen before in the manager's entire career. Because Bournemouth did exactly that. That's how they beat Burnley. They actually played a third centre back for the first time in Iraola's entire career, and they outnumbered Burnley in defense and somehow managed to still have some control of midfield. And for the first time, Solanke didn't shine. So in this particular matchup, it all comes down to how quickly City get the first goal. It's like, if Bournemouth hold it together for 30 minutes, then it might stay 3-0. But if City gets something in
then it might stay 3-0. So it's still, you're tempering our expectations. That's like the floor, right? That's what we're thinking is the floor. That's if they do well. Anything better than 3-0 that's a great result. If they get a draw from this, holy shit, that's what I can say.
Yeah. So I mean, so conceptually, if Bournemouth have three aggressive centre backs, they can potentially match up against, whoever City's three forwards are. But City unfortunately have way more than three forwards, right? They can morph their formation into a 2-2-6 and completely outnumber Bournemouth here. So
6 attackers, yeah. And there's
yeah,
defenders joining in. People talking about Kyle Walker in the chat as well. I
yeah.
think,
So,
yeah,
so
well,
that
but
was the first name. Yes, Kyle
Bournemouth are a
Walker.
better team than United. I don't know. For me, right, I always say the table doesn't lie, and I always say game week 10 is around the time when I take my FPL rank seriously and the league table and the Premier League seriously. And Bournemouth, without that win, I reckon they could have sacked the manager last week because it's going to start turning hard for them now. They've got the tough games now ahead. And had they not got those 3 points that they needed there, this would be a daunting moment. Like you say, it was a last ditch attempt to survive relegation. So I don't think it's harsh to say a team that just survived sacking their manager because of where he was in the table is harsh because he's got to turn it around now. And I hope he does. Because when he first came, Gabe said he had some great ideas. We talked about Iriola at the beginning. We thought what he might bring and, hungry, pressing team. But it's not fully this season seems to have gone so well for them. So hopefully it's a turnaround. But this is Man City. I'd like to think just to finalize, like for myself, it's more that I'm just super respectful of how good I think City are. It's not their opponent. I would say this about whoever they were playing, apart from maybe one or two teams in the league. So yeah, for me, it's more just how I view City is where that comes from, rather than a disrespect to Bournemouth. It's more about City's abilities than anything
Well,
else.
I think City are, and I mentioned this yesterday. They're a team that are kind of like growing in strength. Their players are becoming available. They have Grealish coming into the fray, and then they have Doku as an impact player who's already done some damage. But I think the key to this one is whether Bournemouth line up in a back five or a back four. If they're in a back five, then I think that actually favors Alvarez. And I think we could see stuff from Alvarez, and that dents a little bit Holland's appeal because it's playing as a lone striker against three center backs. You don't have like you're not going to get in behind them, right? You're usually not going to get them 1v1. You're going to have at least 2v1, and they're going to play you quite deep. So that's that. I think that's the only kind of chink in the robot's armor for this week is whether he's up against a back three or a back four, and it's just really a small chink because this is just a little. It's just the fixture is just too easy, and being at home and getting players healthy. I think it's quite obvious, despite what the data says. Interesting that the zonals and the matchups data is actually quite neutral. NetxG is very bullish. All the metrics kind of highlight the 2.29 for City, so it does expect multiple goals here. And City are a team that can turn kind of low XG into high number of goals. So similarly, they can turn lower or 2.29 net XG into 4 goals.
Yeah, it does feel like people who sold Haaland, would you be buying him for this? I think some of the questions from the Discord this week were about going Haalandless after Bournemouth. So there's even debate of, if you've got him, could you still sell him next week and benefit? So let's see where we get with that. But for me, this is just, I've only got Haaland. He's the only player. And if I don't captain him in this fixture, I have no other player in this game from Man City in a game you said could be 3-4-0 that's going to gain me any kind of rank. So that's the way I look at it. And it's just like when we were talking about earlier, like there was questions about should Willian captaincy against United. Like, as poor as United have been, like I'm not going to not captain a City player against Bournemouth. It's just even then you got Liverpool against Luton. Like I just look at those games and I'm like, I just can't see the appeal in a differential captaincy this week of all weeks is what I would say.
Do you own Alvarez?
No, only you and Lucien do. No, I have a Haaland and Watkins with Archer, and my thinking these days is, do I find the money if I downgrade Bowen at some point to go from Archer to like Eddie if the Jesus injury sounds longer than I thought? So part of me thinks Newcastle isn't the entry point away, but at some point, maybe if I just save it because it would be a hit this week, maybe the following week Burnley home, have a bit more information under my belt, And if it still
Right.
looks okay, I've missed the Newcastle fixture and find a way in. So if
Mhm.
West Ham still look
Makes sense.
dysfunctional, if West Ham does, if Bowen isn't someone I want to keep long term, because I did want to have a kind of a Diaby originally. There was an injury doubt with him, Mitoma, as you mentioned. So there's also cheaper players all the way down at the 5 million budget bracket. So I could just make Archer into someone else. And Alvarez is a thought there, but it would require a lot more work. I'd have to get
Right.
2.2 million, or I think it's 2.5 million now. He's 7 million, right? So for me, the only way I'd get Alvarez is when I sell Watkins. And
Right.
maybe that will happen the week that Villa plays Man City. Maybe that's the week I make the switch. Walking straight to Alvarez.
Watkins to Alvarez, Archer to Eddie.
By
Boom.
then it might be too late because that's like 4 or 5 game weeks away.
Oh yeah,
Eddie needs to be now. So Eddie
Needs to
will
be
come in now. If that punt happens, that will be next week. It will be
Right
like
now.
Mitoma and Eddie instead of Archer and Bowen. I'll take that. That's 2 players for 1. That's like it's like a no-brainer for me there. So, but yeah, let's go to the next matchup because I think we will talk a lot about obviously Man City in the captaincy metric anyway, right? And in the Q&A. So yeah, let's keep going. So we're an hour in. We've got through more than half the matchups, which is good. So we've caught up some time. If you've enjoyed this show, guys, please do hit that like button. We appreciate all the support. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and get involved in the chat. We're starring all your questions for the live Q&A at the end. So don't worry, we've already started about 7 or 8 and we've got a few more coming throughout the evening. Sheffield versus Wolves. I feel like you should lead this one, teacher, because just as you mentioned, obviously, all the suffering you've been through. The first year, you must have loved it against the top 6, but the suffering since at times, you deserve to go into a game against Sheffield as a favourite. I know the Neto injury is unfortunate, but what are your thoughts? Are you still optimistic despite that?
Well, that's pretty much the question of the week, isn't it? Without Neto, who delivers? I mean, as a Neto owner myself, I was very tempted to downgrade to Huang, admittedly. Um, and the evidence is in the final 12 minutes of the game when Neto came off. They brought on Kalajic. So Wolves do not have a left winger, right? We've not had a left winger since Podence, and we've been playing Huang on the left. So I think we have to recognize that Wolves respected Newcastle a lot, and they played specialist tactics in the first place. So by default, a lot of people were out of position. Totti was in central midfield after the substitution. So I mean, I'm still scratching my head because I do not foresee the same central midfield featuring against Sheffield United. Um, However, that being said, Wolves did rely on Pedro Neto for a lot of individual matchups. So without that, we are actually looking at more direct passes going up front. So in the setup that happened against Newcastle in the final 10 minutes, Kalajic played on the left, and he's a very underrated player with his feet, but majority of play still went down the right side. And this was where they shifted Huang over to the right, and Cunha surprisingly played the full 90 minutes. Will probably be really, really central to what they will do against Sheffield United. So if there were a differential you'd see coming to the fore, I love to say Sasha, but Cunha is definitely the brainless go-to pick. It's just unfortunate that he's a forward in the game. So yeah, because of his link-up play and the way, like, you can foresee almost that Sheffield United also have this glaring weakness. I don't know how long Ahmedhodzic is going to be out for, right? All these long names, I swear.
The
But
injuries are mental, aren't they? It was like the back 4 against Arsenal. I don't think any of the centre backs were first choice. The full
yeah,
backs weren't
yeah,
full choice. Like,
yeah. So yeah, Robinson, usually an outside centre back, is forced to play at centre back, and they have Aaron Trusty. Oh dear goodness, yeah. So
I
it's not
saw
good.
him in the MLS tour before we sold him to Sheffield. Yeah,
I mean, nothing against the players. It's more of the fact that when you lose these combination of players, such as, I mean, really experienced players such as Egan Basham and now Ahmedhodzic, you lack leadership. You'd think that someone like Wes Foderingham would come into the fray as, their senior goalkeeper, but like some of the goals, right, Nima, you would have seen conceded against Sheffield United. Like, even you'd say that as Foderingham was flailing at that corner before conceding that Nketiah second goal, you know that that is a very weak punch and a very weak excuse to say that he had an Arsenal player in front of him. That was very, very weak. And
I
that
couldn't
lack
believe
of
they spent
leadership.
like 5 minutes watching it on VAR looking for any reason to disallow the goal. These people, man, like unbelievable stuff. But you're right. I think with Sheffield, for me, I saw a list of the injured players before the match. And I feel for those who went for the Saka captaincy because at least he returned, I suppose, unlike the Watkins captains. But still, like when you look at it 5-0 and it's like everything you thought the game would be happened. But the assets that people had, like Martinelli, Saka, Odegaard, all three pretty much did nothing, some to a worse extent. So that was definitely an interesting eye-opening one. But in terms of who you think will win, Lucien, here, in the chat, they're saying they reckon a Sheffield win and that it's hard to buy Wolves assets with Neto out. But what are your thoughts? Is Wolves a kind of an avoid for the time being? Because I know some people who, when we were talking about Crystal Palace defense earlier, they're actually looking to go into the Wolves defense. So they're looking at like Kilman, Dawson, Ait Nouri. That's like the player they want in that Gahey slot or Simicast slot or that kind of position. What are your thoughts? Would you buy a Wolves defender, or are you too biased and you're down on your team regardless, so you wouldn't buy them?
Well, one of the prevalent philosophies of my playing FPL is that I have to trust identity and process. As much as Wolves have delivered results, we still don't know what kind of manager Gary O'Neill is. We still don't know what kind of side Wolves are. So at least compared to the Lopetegui and the Bruno Lage era, and arguably even the Nuno Santos era, there was an identity of how Wolves faced, from counter-attacking through the wing-backs of Johnny and Doherty to the fast-paced do or die, ride or die philosophy that Bruno Lage had that amplified their wingers, and to Lopetegui's practicality, fielding so many central midfielders that they suffocated opponents. I don't know what this Wolves team is other than Neto. Whoa! So I'm a bit reluctant to recommend anybody right now because Enori could be left back one game and he could be left wing marking Trippier the next. I really don't know what O'Neill will do next. I really don't. I wish I could.
I think we'll ask this question now and then we'll move on, which is just from multi-live evil while we can. What about somebody like Semedo? Again, it's just what you've said, right? I think for me, I went for Kilman as someone who I thought was the better defender between him and Dawson. But Dawson can get you that crazy goal out of the blue. So Ait Nouri, the reason I mentioned him, and again, I mentioned all three ahead of Semedo, was because Ait Nouri, I heard he could play obviously more in the midfield role, as you say, rather than as a defender. So there's a bit of appeal there as well. But I think ultimately, it sounds like we shouldn't be buying into these teams. You could argue that if you've got Archer and you've got an injured player somewhere, you don't want to make a transfer, maybe you'd play him at home in this game. But there's also threats with him, right? He didn't start the last game. And I don't know if anyone in the chat knows why, but I've not seen anything about whether it was tactical or injury related. So that's one to keep an eye out on in terms of fodder that might not play.
Oh,
But let's
I can comment on the Sheffield United tactics, but
yeah, sure.
just in one line.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
because Brewster was left winger. They rather attack through their central midfielders in Hammer and the other guy. But yeah, they'd rather attack using their central midfield. Oh, McAtee, sorry. Yes, they'd rather attack using McAtee and Hammer rather than any of their central forwards because they don't get any of the ball. Yeah, that's it.
That makes sense. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one is Newcastle versus Arsenal. I'll let you guys tell me what you think there. It's got the wrong screenshot though, so I won't read the number out. That's why I'm going straight to you.
Man, sorry for all these mistakes. I'm going back and I'm checking. I'm checking in my slides, and they're fine
They're
in the
right
slides.
in there,
It's
so it's not
just in the
updated on
saving.
Yeah, that's true. Damn.
Yeah, apologies for that. I'll bring up the slide though, so
go
so
for
we can
it.
read through the data. While I do that, why don't you guys get started with
Yeah, I guess the question is, this is the week we were saying about Eddie. Do you buy him? He's the most transferred in player. Everyone said, including Prass himself, who had him, he was like, "Don't worry, no, it's too late. There's no point buying him." But now that it makes you question whether you just go there in the next week or two if you can. Ultimately, he's not going to play Sheffield United every week. I think there's adding that. But many players who played a lot more Premier League minutes than him have failed to register a Premier League hat-trick. many players who are much better than him. So, and they've all played teams like Sheffield as well in the past. So, I think definitely in this one, I have currently Gordon, Burn, Saka, Gabriel. If I don't make a transfer, I'm playing all four unless I bench a defender for Taylor. So yeah, I'm looking at like Burn to Simicast to get out of this one. I'm looking to keep Gabriel. I'm still confident there. I feel that was just a one-off. And Gordon, I want for the Bournemouth game after Arsenal, but he is also in my thoughts very firmly on the chopping block. Because before I thought, Newcastle was scoring so many goals. They were so great. They battered PSG. They've done so well in the league. They were top next five for FDR for attack and defense in the matchup show just last week. And then I looked at them, they just looked tired. Like the season was catching up with them. Like they have like 7 players for the front 6 positions. So it just feels like they're running short on numbers and the same players are playing across all games and all cups. And they got to play United, right, in the cup again now before the next game against Arsenal. And I'm not sure how I feel now about Newcastle. So I'd love you to tell me that you think differently about Gordon. And obviously Wilson will probably make an appearance in conversations because I know that he kind of is somewhere there in the captaincy metric. That's your sneak peek. He's somewhere there where we don't know, but he's made it, right? Isaac is out for the foreseeable. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Gordon and Wilson?
Well, I'll go over the data real quick. NetxG, Arsenal, Newcastle 1.52, Arsenal 1.3. So kind of muted data there. And the FDR agrees. Newcastle 2.3 and Arsenal negative 0.1 away here. It's interesting. The shots, the goal predictors are quite low for Arsenal because again, Arsenal away they're only generating 0.09 xG per shot, and in addition to that, slightly under 14 shots a game. Just by comparison, Newcastle generate 0.14 xG per shot compared to 0.09 for Arsenal, and they have almost 16 shots per game, so more xG per shot, or higher xG per shot, higher shots per 90 for Newcastle. Then that's kind of why they're favored here. The zonals, the central matchup for Newcastle pops up at 3.8 compared to 2.8 on the right and 2.3 on the left. So again, that's kind of strengthening that Callum Wilson argument with Isak's injury. But for Arsenal, there's just like a massive discrepancy on the right-hand side. So the left is 1.8, the center is 2.6, and it's 4.7 on the right for Arsenal. Now, you think of Saka up against Dan Burn. That I don't think you kind of like that matchup despite the overall kind of team matchup.
That's interesting to look at specific parts of the pitch and whether you actually like compared to the matchup as a whole, you probably favor Newcastle at home here, but maybe a draw is realistic and ultimately they could very easily win this one. So I think the likes of Wilson, he's someone definitely worth considering. As a Gordon owner, I'm still interested in him, but he's auditioning for his spot at the moment. He's one of my potential outs because my team, I don't know. Remember just a week ago, I was telling you I had no fires, and you were like, "Are you hearing yourself? You have no fires." And then suddenly a week later, I'm like looking to sell 2-3 players. Things change real quick in FPL.
I think Gordon is. I think Gordon is maybe the best sub 6 million midfielder.
So you're still there. Okay, so you're still where we were last week. You still give him the time.
I'm not even thinking to move him on.
Bowen is higher up on my chopping list than Gordon, especially because of the price.
The price,
if I'm honest. Yeah. So definitely you are right. Gordon isn't the first one in that list. It's Bowen actually, because Salah, Son, and Saka, they're the other 3. So yeah, we'll keep going from here. We'll just give this matchup a few more minutes, but we're still trying to catch up a few. But ultimately, I think what I said at the beginning about Newcastle being the best for attack and defense on the FDR for the next 5. When we get to the next 5 at the end of the matchups, I'm keen to see how that's changed with just 1 week. Now that this fixture is more weighted, and obviously they've lost one of the other ones. So for me, finally, I just think Trippier, if you still have him now, I see people now looking to use this match as an exit point. They're like, this could be my way to spread the funds and get the other assets that I couldn't afford before. So I don't dislike that because I wouldn't really want to be selling him next week against Bournemouth. So if you are going to get out of there, I feel like each week, the value of the delta that Gabe mentioned last week to be gained, you want to maximize it. And last week, Gabe ultimately ended up being right because that Madison to Saka move, it netted out at 0. So it's like you could do it then, and maybe because you can't afford them later, you do it then. But if the money isn't a problem, you don't need to rush into the move just in a week where it's got not as much of an expected gain, as I guess what I'm saying. So the delta was the same. So I think in this, I'm definitely think it's gonna be a tight game. Yeah, 100%. And in about 9 minutes, we'll get the official Arsenal lineups for tonight. We might even get the Newcastle lineups for on air and stuff against United. So when that happens, we can have a look at what we think in the captaincy metric. But I'm very happy with Saka, Gabriel, and Gordon. It's just Burn is my weak point, is where I would conclude. Any final thoughts you guys want to have?
Yeah, I'm going to throw a question to you guys, but Lucien, do you want to add something first?
What the metrics and the average position maps will not pick up is the fact that Nima, you would have watched the Sheffield United game, I hope. Literally after the first goal, Saka switched over to the left. I think they have finally found a solution to their left side. Bukayo Saka in the left half space was so scary good that Sheffield United could not cope. They tried to pull markers, they tried to use centre backs to follow people in the midfield, and yeah, they got absolutely torn apart by this move. This will
Trusty
not
got
show up in the
destroyed.
metrics.
Yeah, Trusty got destroyed. You could see they were
Yeah.
panicking out there on the pitch.
I mean, I think this is where goals will come from. Because as much as I like those individual matchups, I think after the first goal, everything will go haywire. I am a Gabriel and a Trippier owner myself, and I'm benching both for Taylor. And
Yeah.
it's really because I see goals in this game, but I don't see Trippier getting assists.
You
because
reckon like a
Wolves,
2-2 or like a
yeah.
2-1 win somewhere?
Wolves have provided the template to getting people up there to press Trippier down. And I think Arsenal have every ability to do the same, whether through Martinelli or Trossard or even Fabio Vieira down the left if you wanted to. But I mean, that's how I foresee the game going. Lots of goals instead of this being a tight match, because it's not Trippier that's the only weakness here. As you mentioned, Dan Burn. I think the fact that Pedro Neto managed to like skin him and share in one move just shows that Bukayo Saka has every right to do that. And similarly, Gordon up against Ben White. I think defensively, the only weakness in this entire Arsenal side is people running at Ben White instead of Ben White having majority of the ball. Rashford, even Marcus Rashford has won individual duels against Ben White. So I think that is one potential weakness exploiting Arsenal on the break.
And that was going to be my question. Do you start like do you bench Newcastle and Arsenal defenders in favor of, say, Spurs defenders? Or you're starting Charlie Taylor, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
I'll start Taylor potentially if I don't do Burn to Simicast this week. I'd bench Burn for Taylor. I would, but I'd still play Gabriel because for me, I feel like if I expect him to play this game, he'll be needed more. And I would not be shocked if we get a set piece goal because since the beginning of last season, we're still one of the top teams for goals from set pieces. And in a game like this, if it becomes a scrappy goal fest, I can see Gabriel just being there for that one moment. Finally, he'll get his goal. Last season, he got 3 Premier League goals from about 5 XG. So the variance hit him badly that year. But, over the last 2, 3, 4 years, he's had the highest goal scoring defender in the Prem. So I'm not talking about that XG over one season, one game. I'm talking about the player as a whole over like 3, 4 years in the league. And I just back it in this matchup from my perspective that this could be the way through.
So unfortunately, the mistake in the slide here, but the headed matchup heavily favors Newcastle, 4.1 to 1.0 for Arsenal. So I don't know if I see that headed goal for Gabriel.
But obviously, like Botman isn't there, and I don't think data shows that team of Lechelle's there. Even though he's the captain, I think he can be got at. Burn can be got at. I think our team will try to play majority of the game if possible in their half or their third. And just due to that, we'll get more time there for a mistake to happen or for them to slip up under pressure. I'm sure they can also equally, just cut through us at points of the game. But I think it's about what we do in the possession and the spells we have it, because there will be periods where we'll turn up the screw. And if we get that first goal, it's like, I think what Lucy says, whoever scores that first goal, I think that's going to dictate the flow of the rest of the game. So I reckon Gabriel could be that guy with the first goal to untie the deadlock. We'll see
Yeah, I don't
next
know.
week, right?
I don't see that. One, the data doesn't support it. I don't think the tactics support it too much either. If even if Arsenal is in that final third or in Newcastle's half most of the game, they're not going to send a center back forward
No, for the
because
corners.
Newcastle are
corners.
for corners. But then you're just relying on a very poor-headed matchup against very like tall players and a goalie that's good coming. So I don't see a corner goal really.
I think
don't know.
they're
That
tired.
just
Let's
seems
see
like such
Newcastle
a
tonight.
long
Let's see
shot.
Newcastle tonight. They've had two really.
Tired doesn't mean that they can't jump for headers.
That's fair. Yeah, that is fair. Lascelles is still a professional and he is the club captain. It's unfair.
I think it's more likely that Saka burn than,
yeah, that makes more sense.
Then Gabriel gets a header.
No, that's fair. I think we should go to the next matchup because these guys will still come up. But I do think ultimately this should be an exciting game for the neutral, is what it sounds like from your guys' takes on how the tactics will unfold. So Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa. Any thoughts here? Because that Watkins blank, I saw you commenting on it online. You weren't a fan, Gabe, of people saying Watkins had a high XG, his highest of the season compared to a blank. But you said that was a bad thing. DRB smashed it this week. What are your thoughts there? Because obviously their roles have slightly reversed. Is it just that tactic by tactic each game week? Unai Emery, one of them will be more favored based on the matchup, and you can't like captain them going forwards because it's difficult to know which week which one is going to be prioritized. Which one would be the benefit?
So I actually think a little bit differently. We have seen that like big swings to Watkins or a big swing to Diaby recently, but that makes the team quite predictable. I mentioned this yesterday as well. I think they will both kind of even out. I think Watkins should score a little bit more than Diaby overall in general. But rather than like Watkins scoring 12 and Diaby 2, and then Diaby scores 13 and Watkins 2, it'll be more like an 8-6 or like a 7-3 kind of thing. It'll be kind of, I think they will eventually balance themselves out. But yeah, that Watkins point, everyone was saying, oh, Watkins has all this XG. It's unbelievable he hasn't scored. He got like 0.72 XG on missing 2 big chances on the same play. So he got that extra XG because he missed that big chance. You want the low XG and the goal, not the high XG and the no goals. So yeah, that actually was not a benefit to Watkins. And this game was interesting. It started out very much funneling to Watkins, and he missed the early big chances, and it wasn't working out. And Diaby, you could see Diaby visibly get frustrated in the box, like, why aren't you passing me the ball? And after halftime, it switched, and Diaby started to get the ball, and he started to get the chances. So that's why I think it can't be one or the other. They need to be more unpredictable in who they go to, and I think Emery's astute enough to recognize that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think in terms of this week, obviously we've seen Moreno's back in training. I've seen a photo of him today. Matty Cash managed to get the early sub last week as well, just before the clean sheet was conceded. Cheeky 5 points there. I'm currently a Watkins and Cash owner. I don't have DRB. What do you think about people who are looking to bring him in now? Obviously with Forest, Fulham, Tottenham and Bournemouth in the next 4. Would you still be going that way, or has what you've seen from the last match kind of changed your view and maybe you want to spread your eggs into different teams more? If you were wildcarding this week, would you have 3 Villa players?
No, 3 is too much. And I think, I don't know. I think Diaby, I wouldn't be looking to bring Diaby in. For me, Diaby is a person. If I need funds to get somewhere or something like that, Diaby could be on the chopping block for me. I'm not eager to sell him. I think he's fine and he has good matchups. But if I need the money, I may sell him, I guess. So I wouldn't be eager to bring Diaby in. I don't know how you see the Diaby Watkins dynamic there, Lucien.
Sorry, couldn't find my mouse. Oh, the goals are just so spread out. Okay, so I think first things first, right? We need to comment on Villa's attacking potential before we look at Nottingham Forest's defensive deficiencies. Because if you look at the average position map here for Villa, holy cow, what a big difference it is. I mean, the reason Diaby was so frustrated in the first place was because Villa played this narrow system against Luton, right? And they basically dropped their defensive midfielder into centre back. So Kamara became a third centre back, and he just pumped long balls forward. He did it for Diaby, he did it for Cash, and everything was going down the right side because they were targeting the three central players, all crammed in your first graphic picture there: 19, 11, and 22. Diaby, Watkins, and Zaniolo, another orthodox number 10. When it didn't work, or when it sort of worked, literally at halftime, Zaniolo got hooked and Leon Bailey came on. You see this second graphic, right? Leon Bailey is so far on the right side that everything completely changed. I mean, I'd love to see everything come together for Villa, but they just don't have a strategy that they deploy for 90 minutes. So I just feel that when you look at individual matchup, right? You look at what Forest will do. I think Villa is a side that reacts based on how opponents set up, and Nottingham Forest, again, just like Villa, are unpredictable in terms of personnel. Because somehow, some way, they find a player that we've never heard of before, and in their 5-4-1, which they rolled out against Liverpool, yeah, I get it's completely different. Forest right now, nobody knows how they'll play because they can have Montiel one game and they can have Aurier, and then suddenly in the last 10 minutes they'll throw Nico Williams on. And now they have a dribbling centre back in the form of Murillo. I mean, I'm confused. So I can't tell. I cannot tell what Villa will do against Nottingham Forest. But I think for all intents and purposes, like it's that saying, right? If the size of the pie is large enough, then just own multiple players and catch majority of that pie. Because besides Diaby and Watkins, I don't see the goals really funneling out to any particular player besides Douglas Luiz. Yeah.
Right.
I think we
just a quick
yeah.
note on just a curiosity. Look at Nico Williams after the subs were made. He's way up on the right hand side there for Forest. He's isolated on an island up there. That's funny. Similar isolation as Leon Bailey for Villa, which is interesting. Wonder if any of those can do something. But yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, I think the next matchup is obviously a big one for the week. Another captaincy option. Luton at home to Liverpool. NetxG for Liverpool of 1.46 and Luton Town 1.2. Even the FDR actually is 0.5 for Liverpool in attack and 1.3 for Luton. So we said that we think Mariner and the FDR were drunk this week because it's basically saying on the FDR that Luton is favored in this matchup. It's looking at 1-0 Luton victory.
So
let us know what you think in the chat. But this is one of the craziest metrics of the last 3-4 years. This is our fourth season of Net That Haul, and this is one of the wildest ones I've seen yet, I reckon. Any of you see it being accurate, or?
I can't explain it. I can't explain how. I mean, Luton defensively have been better than maybe they've been given credit for at home. But they have so little in attack. I mean, look at that left. I don't know. Something's got to be wrong. Look at the left zonal matchup for Luton. It's at 5. That can't be right. I honestly think there's some error in the data here. I would disregard.
We talk about the match from a purely matchups point of view. So from a tactical lens from you and Lucien, let's ignore what we think. The data suggests on your NetxG as well, to be fair, that it's still tight, but at least it's in Liverpool's favour. So I think overall, what do you guys think if we put the data to one side and just from how you see the match kind of playing out?
Well, I mean, attack Luton's left half space. I think Lucien just finished talking about that. We've mentioned it here on the show and in the matchups thread for going several weeks now, 3 or 4 weeks now. And I mean, tactically, this is an ideal situation for Salah to absolutely haul. It's just everything.
I'm surprised you didn't say Darwin.
Are you? I'm sure you're really surprised. No, and I think you know, Luton are going to be playing deep, so I don't see Darwin being able. We can see in the before this, they obviously they didn't play. Let's see, I'm looking at. I mean, look, if you see how deep they play, both, I guess, before the subs were made, after the subs were made, obviously, like things get a little more chaotic. But you expect them to really sit deep, and Lucien has talked about in the review show, has talked about Darwin's strengths, and his strength is, as Lucien mentioned, is swiveling, like he's turning, using his hip to pivot and get the ball in space, and not having much time to think, but then just like fire something off. And I don't think that this tactical matchup lines up in that way. I think they're going to have to get the ball wide to create space. I think the Liverpool's right side is going to have so much opportunity that there won't be so much of a need for Darwin. If anything, well, I usually think this, to be fair, but I think Jota tactically fits this game better than Darwin, precisely because of that lack of space. But I'll turn it over to Lucien to see how he sees this tactically.
This is a Soboslai game, unfortunately.
Yes,
When you
Soboslai.
when you look at the way the goals were conceded by Luton against Aston Villa in particular, right? So you know how I mentioned earlier that Kamara shifted into a right centre back role. The passes he played were just literally straight down the middle. It could have been long and high, it could have been straight and low, and it could have been anybody on the receiving end. The problem here is that Luton started the season with Lockyer, Amari Bell on the left, and somebody on the right. And now they're starting Mengi at right centre back and Osho on the left. I mean, Luton are going through some personnel changes. Like Jacob Brown has played right wing back, right forward, right, central mid. So Luton are trying to figure out whether they want to play deep or whether they want to play aggressive, because the advantage of having more players at the back is that you can use one of your spare centre backs to actually push up and be aggressive, and Luton aren't even being aggressive. So it's a very confusing Luton side. And while they are trying to establish their own identity, teams are just playing through them, and that's why the left is so exposed. I'm not even going to talk about gaps. It's just a matter of personnel quality, player for player. If Salah actually does a 100-meter sprint against Osho or Doty or anyone on the left side, Salah wins hands down. The question is, will Salah shoot? Or, as Leon Bailey did, will he try to square it for somebody, forcing an own goal? I think that's really the only factor not captaining Salah, is that he will turn creator instead of scoring. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. I mean, for me, my bigger concern is whether Luis Diaz's parents are okay, because I need him. He's still in my side. Yeah. But otherwise, it's gonna be the Szoboszlai Salah show. Oh, I can explain why Luton's left side is so huge though. It's also because whenever Adebayo plays and he drifts over to the left, Adebayo's massive, absolutely massive, especially when he played against Villa. It was like, I cannot imagine somebody towering over Konza, and Adebayo did that so well, so regularly, that wow, absolute wow. So yeah, I think Luton at home will trouble Trent Alexander-Arnold in that sense, the more direct long ball crossing way.
I think we will come back to these guys in the captaincy metric as well. I think just from my perspective, the number one defender target this week is so easy to say is Tsimikas, just because, you know, just overall, whether they keep a clean sheet in this game or some of the tougher ones like City 3 weeks away, it's just at that price. So one way I look at things, Gabe, is the pricing in FPL compared to fan team. And in there, players like Gabriel, right, they're like 6 million, and Tsimikas is like 5.5 million. So they've been priced as starters for those clubs, and there's a lot less kind of budget friendly options out there. So when I see like these kind of 4.6 million Liverpool defenders due to injuries, I just can't help but get in from the value perspective. So for me, it feels like an easy route there. What I really like though is I'm a Salah owner. I'll probably have Tsimikas soon, but I do like the idea of maybe Bowen to Dominic. I really like what I'm seeing from him, and I actually think he might be one of the signings of the summer in the Premier League. He just genuinely looks the real deal, and I just can't imagine how good he'll be once he's settled in over the next couple of seasons. But he's someone I just want to keep an eye on going forwards for sure. But yeah, and any final
I'm
thoughts?
contemplating Madison to Soboslai this week.
Okay, interesting.
And it'll force a hit down the road, but it's just something I'm thinking about because I do think that opportunity hitting that weakness of a promoted side is pretty nice. Just something I'm weighing.
Yep, fair enough. Let's keep going. We'll come back to, I'm sure, Liverpool guys in the captaincy metric. Last game of the game week, Monday night, Tottenham versus Chelsea. So the NetxG for Chelsea is 1.2. It's 1.57 for Spurs. The FDR is very neutral for both. 0.6 for Chelsea's attack to 0.5 for Spurs' attack. So, yeah, this doesn't look like the kind of most exciting game from a neutral's point of view. But maybe, the new Spurs are going to come and get rid of Pochettino. There's a bit of a emotional narrative to this, their ex-manager coming back to their stadium. How do you think they're going to play? Is there going to be something that the fans are going to take the joy of this season with Ange and really try to dig it into Pochettino, or are they going to be respectful? Let us know in the chat if you're a Tottenham fan, how you feel about the return of Poch. But yeah, I'll let you guys break into the tactical side, and then because we are getting behind, we will go to the next 5 and all that kind of stuff for the show and the captaincy metric, and have Q&As lined up, so please do get them in. Otherwise, before the last matchup, please hit that like button if you've enjoyed this episode. We appreciate all the support, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. So yeah, let's see what you guys think, and then we'll move through to the last bits.
Go ahead, Lucien. Why don't you guys kick us off here?
Well, I think we have to start with the core philosophy that Pochettino has brought to both clubs. I mean, I think intensity is going to be something that dictates this game a lot, not just because it's a derby, but it's also because of the fact that Spurs and Chelsea currently do not have plan A's at work. It is their plan B's that have somehow taken advantage of very, very small moments to come good. I mean, Spurs have finally solved their left-sided equation by introducing Brennan Johnson. And similarly, on the right side, Chelsea, even though Cole Palmer looks so good, he relies on the finishing ability of his teammates, right? So the question comes down to whether Pochettino wants to use the flanks to score, as he did in the first half as he tried, or does he want to use the flanks to create when he brought on Ian Maatsen and Reece James? I do feel that it's going to be a case of Spurs trying to dispossess Chelsea and Chelsea trying to dispossess Spurs similarly. But ultimately, I do feel that the biggest difference in this matchup is the goalkeepers. Sanchez is going to have a huge bearing on this game, considering how intensely Spurs press. And the first mistake, just a matter of whether it happens when the score is 0-0 or whether if Chelsea can take a significant enough lead. But beyond that, Spurs is going to do Spurs things, and they too have a flaw at left back. I don't know what Udogi's status is in terms of injuries, but Emerson Royale did a decent job. They found a solution relatively quickly, and it's just a matter of whether they dominate Chelsea or will they just go full on and yeah, we're going to see all this end-to-end football that's going to be lovely to watch.
I hope so. I think just in terms of time, are either of you looking at kind of selling a Spurs player this week then? Because there's still some Udogi owners. I feel like if you didn't sell last week, could you still sell him this week with this fixture in mind? Is it a good time to get out? I think if I had a Porro, it's probably a more difficult decision. But with Udogi, I'm not sure. He should be back, but ultimately, I think I'd rather just piece of a Spurs attack for the next 4 to 5 weeks. So I think I'd be comfortable leaving that. What do you guys think?
I think you can. I mean, it's just so team dependent. I mean, I think Udogi is a sellable asset. I don't think Spurs' defense is very good. I think they've been bailed out by Vicario a couple of times. And to Lucien's point, if you look at the goalkeeper metric, both Chelsea away at 0.4 is a pretty high goalkeeper metric, and then Spurs home 0.6. This could be a goalkeeper game, like maybe lots of shots, maybe lots of poor shots from Chelsea, so maybe saves or maybe shots off target. So I think the goalkeepers, I think he's right, the goalkeepers could play a huge role in this one. I think Udogi's a sellable asset. I own him, and I'm kind of like debating between him and Share to sell, but I'd like the extra funds selling Share, but Share is healthy, so it's a bit of a tough decision. I think any Spurs asset is sellable, but I think you should have one Spurs attack. Maybe have Son is obviously the better asset, but he's obviously more expensive. So
yeah, it's like whichever one of the two you can keep, right? Son or Madison.
yeah.
For me, I just about kept Son, but it meant I had to make sacrifices elsewhere in my team, right? So it is what it is. Okay, so I think we'll talk more about these guys in the Q&A. I'm sure a lot of the questions will be focused on Tottenham and Chelsea assets as well. There's still some Colwell owners. Some people have Sanchez in goal, as you mentioned. So I think we'll come back to these assets. But for now, I think let's quickly just, for the podcast viewers, let's timestamp this as 1 hour 38. So if you want to see the summary for the game week 11, all the matchups we just went through, you can come back at 1:38. Is there any highlights you want to pull? Maybe just top 3 matchups of the week for attack and defense, and then we can just kind of quickly go through.
I think maybe just given the time, we can move forward.
Sounds good. All right, let's do that then. So in terms of the next one, so the next one is actually the next 5 matchup summary. So this shows you again the FDR, the zonals, and all the headed matchups as well for the next 5 game weeks. In this one, just quickly, so we've got Brentford is actually top 15.1 for attacking FDR, with 15 for Newcastle for the next 5, so still looking good. Liverpool 13.6, Spurs at 12, and Arsenal at just 6.7 now that the Sheffield game is out of the way. So Villa's above them at 7.9 for context. So this is just something to think about in terms of the attack for the next 5. The FDR seems to perhaps favour keeping the Spurs players instead of moving to Arsenal. And then in terms of just any other bits I can see called out, headed matchups, Bournemouth is on 16, Brighton is on 15, and Newcastle is on 16 for the next 5 as well. Just something interesting to see there. And anything you want to call out, or are you happy to keep going? I guess just Arsenal's right side 21 for the next 5. That's still one of the top. Same as Spurs left wing 22. You got Brighton left as well 20. So those are kind of the best, I guess, zonals as well. So do you want to any quick shout outs for the involvement? Well, Buemo is permanently here. Rashford's very high up. Bruno's very high up, but it's obviously involvement on not many goals overall is the issue here. So any thoughts, any love here for the United boys, guys, or we keep going?
I mean, we mentioned the kind of talisman. So here they are. Fernandez is in there, kind of like an imposter in there. He gets a lot of a very small pie, whereas the rest. It's interesting to see. Well, even like 0.35 expected involvement for Saka is decent as well. Bowen is pretty high, but again, a smaller pie. You're trying to maximize expected involvement and size of the pie, right? So I think maybe that would be something to add to this one once we get Mariner back in the fold here. But I think this is kind of all the players we've already talked about. Unless
cool.
do you see anything stand out to you, Lucien?
I think he's
Austin Edward, man. I was just looking at that Austin Edward numbers for the next 3, just specifically for the next 3, and they look pretty good. But yeah, beyond that,
maybe... I did see someone mention Edward as an option again instead of Nketiah, for example.
If you're gonna go 5-5, Cunha.
Yeah, Cunha's in there. I just saw. Yeah, and based on what you said tactically, it's going to be looking good for him. All right, let's do the captaincy metric intro. Lucien, you can quickly go and get a refreshment, I think. Well, you've got it very well. That was very quick. So without further ado, we'll go straight to the captaincy, and then the Q&A is lined up. All right, so Haaland is back where he belongs at the top of the metric real quickly after that ball. Yeah, it's tied, I guess. 89 with Mbeumo. Top 2 tied on 89. That is not reassuring for the non-Mbeumo owners. 84 for Salah in third, 80 for Son. Wilson straight up here in the top 5 as well with 76. And then the rest of the captaincy, just for anyone on podcast who can't see it, we have Trippier, Watkins, Darwin, Maddison, Foden, Wissa, Saka, Diaby, Fernandez, and Bowen to round it off, but the numbers really do take a drop off towards the bottom half there. I'm currently on Haaland. I see absolutely no reason not to be. Obviously, there's the context of the Bournemouth goalkeepers out injured as well. Neto's out, so it's not going to be a first choice goalkeeper playing at the Etihad, and they've got a week off, right? Newcastle just kicked them out the cups and they're not playing midweek, and things look good.
And Mbomo so high is super interesting. That's throwing me for a loop. Because I don't hear anyone.
you just can't process how high he is.
I can't. And it also, like, do I, like, if I want to move Madison, then I mean, according to this, I just go to Mbomo, right?
Sounds like it.
Well,
rather
that's
than
not what
any
I
of
was
the other
planning.
players we're talking about.
I wanted to get Soboslai.
Yeah, you did want to get, but he wouldn't show up here yet. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in with, obviously, the captaincy metrics last 6 game weeks, and ultimately you're going to want to maybe put in some other factors beyond just the data. Black Screen says this metric hates Arsenal, so that's a good laugh. So I think we
So
said
that's
that
Mariner.
before game. Yeah, that's the Mariners' evil cackle in the background. Any thoughts on the captaincies that you see here, Lucien, before we go to the Q&A, just because of the time?
I'm just looking at why Mbomo so high, and to be in the 100th percentile for haul potential, and I think the 97 FDR plays a huge part in this, and that makes me scratch my head. Why would Brentford's matchup matter more than City's? Why would it be higher rated than City's? So
yeah,
it's
that
just
constantly makes you think, how can that one thing have moved him up here? Like, but he was there in the involvement table too, right? Like top 5. So he seems to, these back-to-back hauls have just suddenly thrown his numbers straight back up. He got 2 double-digit hauls in the last 6. Like, in the captaincy table, like, that has a huge bearing, I reckon. Because
Poland only has 1, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's already, a significant portion. It's just the timing of when the last 6 was.
I think it's fair to, like, say we like, if you look at the FDR is really pulling Mbomo up. Whereas the NetxG has the fixture for Mbomo at 60 compared to 97 for the FDR. If we even, like, say average those, say we're not going to side with one or the other, and we just split it down the middle, then Mbomo probably drops significantly to around Son or Callum Wilson level. So I think there are a lot of caveats. Like, if Mariner were here, we could play around with the data there. So I mean,
thank God Odegaard
isn't
in the table, because I can't stand seeing it with the R in the bloody name. But
he won't change it.
But I've noticed
he won't change
Mbomo
either.
Yeah, I was about to go. Mbomo is also
I don't know why. He insists on, but notice Alvarez, he even has the accent on the Alvarez, but he won't spell Mbomo or Mbomo's name properly, or Odegaard properly. I don't know.
Makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Should we go to the Q&A? You guys
just quickly know how low Darwin is, and that's because of the points, I guess, right? Points. FDR isn't great. Obviously, we know Mariner's metric is broken. I think
somehow
rating Luton's so
more.
high. And so I think, again, I think Darwin should be a little bit higher because his points are just like a reflection of a lack of minutes. And that's the big risk with Darwin. So maybe you leave the points because there is a risk of lack of minutes, even though he isn't starting today, but neither is Jota and neither is Diaz. So that doesn't, just because he's not starting today doesn't mean he will start at the weekend. But I think you can move him up a little bit because of the FDR at 55. I think that's just overly harsh. So I think Darwin could, like, I would move him up closer to Alvarez. And Black Screen pointed out in the chat that Alvarez and Darwin actually have the same number of returns this season. So it does make sense for them, like, if we assume they're both starting, for them to be kind of in a similar range for the captaincy metric. If they're both starting.
That's fair. All right, so I've got a few questions from the Discord, but before we go there, and to the 12 so far, I think I've started in the live chat. Keep them coming. A quick thank you to all the haulers to begin with. So our super haulers: David Harrison, Zach, Harbour Boy, Daddy Bot, Greenback Golf, and FPL Robbie. Our haulers: Dread FPL, FPL Craig, Podner, Kevin Rose, C Hunt, Donny FPL, Oscar Arias, FPL Teacher, who's here himself, He's also in the Patreons there, Lucien Gan. So you got many hats you wear, my friend. We got Blonde, S. Scotters M, Tom Gorsuch, Davindra Raj, Lindsay, FPL DG Boy, Akshay, Dom, Claire FPL, Catherine, William the Jaeger, Harry Not Kane, Neil, Sebastian Koo, Benjamin Lockwood, FPL Rubber Ducky, Neil's Apples, Nick Carnes, Big Mike, FPL Discomfort, General Zod, Gladys Street Preachers, Jack M, Jasker and Singh, Antonis, FPL Planner, Jamie Baker, Brett M, Mark Bond, FPL Eric, and Tusks, and our Patreons, Elron, Lucien Yan, FPL California, Thingamabob, Rom Frost, and Mike Burke. So thank you all for your support. Thank you for the Patreons and the YouTube members. It means a lot. Before we go on, just a quick update on the mini league. So now that we've locked the entry, we've passed the second international break. Today, I can see the top 10 game week scorers are on the screen. So I'll read out the top 3. Elron, who is here as well, 95 points last week was his net points. Then we have Dominic Benjamin, 83 points, and Gabriel himself, our own FPLens, 81 points. We've got Mark Bond in 4th, Jonathan Cohen in 5th, Kevin Rose in 6th with his triple captain on Saka, Harry Not Kane, Connor Hunt, Mike Burke, and Mike Evans on his wildcard. So interesting to see the 2 Haaland captain as a top 2 for the game week, and a triple captain and a wildcard make up the top 10 for the week. But yeah, this is obviously as well just a shout out to FPL Game Week. I wanted to include them here because I've loved them for years. They're my go-to tool to check my rank and the assets people in the mini league have against me or the EO within the specific mini league itself rather than against the whole field. So I love this tool. It's always been something I go to. And I just wanted to shout them out as part of reading out the mini league. And just a quick one, because that was this game week. The top 5 overall for the season so far, still Elron with 681 points. Gary is on 658, Dominic on 657, Ken on 646, and Jonathan on 643. So those are the top 5 as well, with all 36 entrants in the league. So, oh look, FPL Discomfort, new member. Cheers, thank you, welcome back to the show, my friend. But you're already in the shout outs, but I didn't remove you because I know you were going to renew. You gifted so many memberships. We appreciate you, my friend. So
I think we should just start adding random people to the shout outs to see if they become members because we're shouting them out.
That's true. Yeah, shouting out Discomfort and suddenly he's a member.
Like, shout out our new member, FPL General, and then see maybe Mark comes in.
We got Grady. Thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate that, my friend. Let us know if you have issues getting into the Discord. You need to go to the web browser, go to the user settings, and connect with the same Google account that you log into YouTube for your membership. That will drop you right into the server. If you want to join the mini league, the code is HUP69D. But let's go into the Q&A. We're here now. We made it. I'll start with a couple of the ones from the Discord members before we go. So Dom Black Dragon asks, Ward Prowse, hold or sell? Any good replacements? So this is quick fire because we are 1 hour 50 in, guys. We're going to try still get out just around 2 hours. So why don't you go to that one, Lucien? Is Ward Prowse a sell for you, and who would be a good replacement?
I'd hold. This is a set piece battle. This is Ward Prowse territory, just for 1 game.
Fair. That's a hold. What about you, Gabe? If you were going to sell, who would be your favorite replacements, like top 2, top 3 in that price point?
Long term, Anthony Gordon. Short term, I don't know. Can't think of anyone short term. No one's coming to mind. I was gonna say Neto. I wanted to bring Neto in this week, but so I don't know. I guess I would say Anthony Gordon. I just like him as a long term pick in that price point.
That makes sense. Fair enough. By the way, FPL Discover was an upgrade, not a renewal, but the way that YouTube or StreamYard shows it is different to on the actual YouTube app. So yeah, I can see what he's saying. Yeah, he is now a super hauler. So he is one of the top, the creme de la creme, our biggest supporters, keeping the channel alive. Thank you, guys. Now let's get to the next question without further ado, because we are short on time. Sebastian Koo planned to roll in game week 11, but was wondering long term, do you think Maddison plus Son or Saka plus Son is better? So this is kind of where I've moved Maddison to Saka last week. So my answer would be Saka and Son. I prefer splitting it like that. But what are your thoughts, guys?
I'm with you, Nima.
Yeah, I think right now he's saying Maddison to Son alone. Will this end up as a sideways move? So I think he's at the moment he has Maddison and not Son. So to get to the Son and Saka combo, he would be doing Maddison to Saka, then bringing in Son for someone else. So that seems a bit extreme, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, apart from that, I don't know about moving between Maddison to Son. Would you be using a transfer there? I don't think I would.
Not this week, but after this
Not
week.
not
maybe.
against Chelsea. Maybe in a future week. We've got another question. What's your opinion for going Haalandless after Bournemouth?
You take this one, Lucien.
So this is from
Wait,
FPL DG boy. Your thoughts about going without Haaland after the Bournemouth fixture? So his next
you'd
games
have
after
to have
that are Chelsea,
Oh,
Liverpool,
after
Tottenham,
Bournemouth,
and Villa. Yeah, so after Bournemouth,
Mm.
he faces Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, Aston Villa, and then Luton and Crystal Palace before the blank.
Important to note, Chelsea away, which I think could be tricky. Liverpool home, Spurs home, Villa away.
First question comes down to who the three forwards are, right? If you're going to run a 3-5-2, I do feel that it's worth it because right now you could probably name 5 reasonably expensive forwards and have Watkins and potentially Alvarez / whoever it is up front. I think FPL is a game of alternatives, and if you, let's say, sell Haaland for the next 6, then you are looking at either shifting into an Eddie Nketiah, perhaps, or you'd probably be looking at Watkins, Alvarez, and I can't even name a third forward that's expensive.
Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson.
Yeah, okay. And the money you save, right? That 7 million drop from Haaland to Alvarez has to be spent really well in midfield. So it comes down to your price structure in midfield, and if you already have Salah, assuming, then you are going to look at Son, Saka,
Quick fire, guys. Quick
Madison.
fire.
Quick
TJ,
fire,
quick fire.
Lucien. Quick
Yeah.
fire.
We already
I mean,
You
1
go.
hour
So
55.
Lucien, do you go
buy
without
good players.
Haaland after Bournemouth?
If you can buy 3 good players to replace Haaland plus the 2 cheap players that you have, then yes.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay, cool. Next one from Kieran FPL Discomfort. His midfield is Salah, Son, Bowen, Diaby, and Diaz. So he's asking, so just so you know who he has, so you don't suggest he gets them. He's looking at Diaz out for Adjunga and Højlund to Darwin. So he wants a midfield option that isn't Mitoma. He likes Adjunga. He's cheaper than Mitoma. And you can't convince him to buy Bowen, Son, or Diaby because he already has them. So if you were selling Diaz now, would you downgrade to Adjunga and get the money to do Højlund to Darwin? Or do you see any other option, basically? His alternative is Luis Diaz to Douglas Luiz. So I don't know. Like, I think I prefer the double move.
Yeah, I like the double move to bring Haaland in. I think that's perfectly fine. Adingra, I think I prefer Adingra than what was the other option? Was it Palmer?
Luis Diaz. Douglas Luiz, sorry.
Douglas Luiz. Douglas Luiz. I just think Palmer will, or Adingra will be more in the attack than Douglas Luiz, but he comes with the risk. I think there is a rotation risk there. I'm not positive. I just don't know.
He also asked about Højlund to Watkins, which
yeah, get rid of Højlund. Get rid of every Manchester
fair
United
enough.
asset you
So
have.
now to the questions from the show tonight. So the first one was, so Black Screen just asked, how do you not see your rank if you load the website? So I think you mentioned you use an app called Football Manager.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't go directly on the website. I think it's an Android only app because I've tried to use it before, but I can't on iOS. Black Screen had asked, would you captain Willian this week? Absolutely not, mate. I'm sorry. Let's move this here so we can see Lucien as well. Fingermabob asks, would you be playing Nketiah over Bowen or Mitoma this week? I don't think I would. No.
Yeah.
No, not
Lucien
for me.
would.
Lucien would. Okay, we'll take that. 2v1.
No way in
I
hell
like
I'll
that.
play Bowen.
But
I
quick
wouldn't
fire. No. If he wants to see why, he can look at the matchups on the timestamp for those 2 games. All right, so let's see what else we've got. We've got anything about Kyle Walker? He was cleaning up the bonus points from Black Screen. I think I still prefer to go to the John Stones route. Craig had a question. Have a centre forward maybe to allow Arsenal to play more direct and evade the high Newcastle press. So we saw some of this in the Community Shield, Havertz against City. We saw it a bit in the City game at the end. In game, he moved into the centre forward role. So maybe in this kind of match, I could see that. There was arguments that maybe Eddie would play certain games tactically. But I think after you score a hat-trick, you're not going to get benched. So he's playing again tonight, so maybe we'll see. But so is Havertz. Keep an eye on the subs, see the score line. if Arsenal are winning tonight, against West Ham, and one of them gets rested for the weekend, it might be obvious who's starting or not. But
the one thing I'll say
what do
about
you think
Newcastle
tactically?
is I don't know if I expect them to. I don't think they're in any state to come out and press Arsenal high. They have injuries. They're in several
That's the way I'm
competitions.
wondering. Yeah, so I thought
So
they'd be
I think they'll
tired,
play a
right?
little more
I think
conservatively.
And
Arsenal will
it's
play
Joel
in their
Linton
third.
and Longstaff. It's Joel Linton and Longstaff pressing. So it's a bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They're not going to be pressing like that.
The best part is Combs says Nima the disrespect, but I don't know which part because so much of it could have been disrespectful. Can we talk about Captain Darwin? I called Captain Darwin last week. I was called a madman. I don't think you're a madman. I don't mind your option of captaining him this week. I know, obviously, in the metric, he wasn't as high as Salah or Haaland, but ultimately, I want to have fun. And if you're going to enjoy captaining him, I would say go for it. Claire asks, my one free transfer this week was used on Odegaard out for Dominic, avoided his price rise overnight, and Ode is likely to drop tonight. So they had to go early before it became
Love it.
unaffordable. I like that. So I think this was just more a comment, obviously. Is this the end for Richarlison? GB asks.
Yep.
Yep, I think Brennan Johnson may see more of him and what he can do for Spurs. Blackstream asks, why do you want to move Madison? So I think this one's for you. I've already done it, so it's
I
too
did
late.
not.
Like I've done it. Have
I
you
kept
done it
him.
as well? Oh, you kept
No,
him. Are you going to keep him this week as well?
yes,
I
absolutely.
think Gabe might be selling this week potentially, or
I don't know. It's I wouldn't say I want to move Madison. I would say I want to get I want Arsenal attack.
fair.
I have
Okay, it's
double
more
Arsenal
that
defense and I want a piece of Arsenal attack rather than double
because you've got
Tottenham
Raya as
attack.
well, of course. Yeah. So we've got this
Yeah,
last
I've got
question
Raya
from
and
FPL
Gabriel.
Discomfort before we go. So he asks, isn't Harden likely to have more opportunities versus the better teams, i.e., those who attack back rather than mid-low blocks? So the question is that, isn't it? But we were just saying that for like the Bournemouth game, we don't know if they'll play with the three centre backs on top of him the whole game, or if it will be back to their previous formations, which we'd never
Can
seen
I
them
take
play.
this one?
Yeah, you go for it.
Haaland would play better against teams who attack back when the score is 1-0 or 2-0 or 3-0. That's how Haaland works. He's like the basketball player. But if you want to talk about mid blocks versus low blocks, right, who that defend permanently, just look at that Man United game. Haaland basically looks at where the centre back is and just takes this backward run away from him, and he drifts to the far post for headers. That's about it. Like Haaland's just that tall, so you just have to put one to the far post, and that's Haaland at the far post for you.
He's just waiting there, like for that goal, that guaranteed goal, as you say. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. And by the way, that is for selling post Bournemouth. So yeah, so he's not suggesting this Bournemouth game is the game to sell him, but because we said the games afterward, Chelsea away, Liverpool home, Tottenham home. The way I look at it is that two of those games, Liverpool and Tottenham, are both at home at the Etihad. So yeah, I still don't think. I think selling him was a few weeks ago. Like the Gameweek 8 wildcard, as you sold him for a few weeks and gained huge ranks, captaining Salah every week, and then maybe they even brought him back. Or even if they didn't yet, you could argue they could bring him back for this Bournemouth game and make back. They've made such a gain from that period they didn't have him that it doesn't matter if they take a hit to get him back now. I feel like the Haaland-less plan was before, and you got to account for the final piece, which is they're getting stronger. So City, as you said earlier in the show, the players are all slowly coming back from injury. They're getting better, and a lot of those bad results they were without Rodri. And I think we can all agree that he is so pivotal, probably more important to that team than even Haaland's goals. So really, Rodri back, the free losses were without him, and other players are coming back like John Stones and others too. So Grealish. So yeah, I just think now it's time to be investing in City, not going without just because you get out of the Bournemouth game. That'll be my final 2 cents. But this has been Net That Haul. We just about managed 2 hours and 1 minute. So somehow, despite time running away from us and spending, I think it was nearly 10 minutes on Fulham United and then about 15 minutes on Brentford West Ham, despite the first two going so disastrously long, we have made it just about, guys. Enjoy the League Cup tonight. May your arrows be green. And actually, just a shout out to our friend Akshay, one of the haulers as well. In the mini league, you will see, unfortunately, Akshay is bottom. And this is due to a horror story that I thought I'd share. He wanted to activate the wild card. He made the transfers, I think. Oh, no, sorry. What happened was he activated the wild card, didn't know it was the Friday deadline, so didn't get to make any of the moves, and has the same team he had pre-game week 10, but the wild card's gone as well. So I just want to shout him out because that's painful, my friend, and he's going to try and play new strategies, have fun, make new targets, and not worry about rank for the season, as he says. Just have the opportunity now that this has happened and he's lost the wild card.
Play it weekly. Play it weekly.
Just have fun, learn new
Day by
stuff,
day.
and maybe use that to apply to next season. But I just want to shout him out before we go because that is tough. If that happened to me, I'd be fuming. So I can relate, bro. I feel for you, Akshay. See you all next time for Game Week 11 reviews show next week, first on the Tuesday, and then the matchup show on the Wednesday. As always, may your arrows be green. Thank you for joining us, Lucien. And take care, guys. See you on the other side. Green arrows.